The rescue. The sun sagged low over the jagged mesas, painting the New Mexico desert in fire and gold. Dust swirled with each beat of the Mustang's hooves as Luke Callahan rode hard along the canyon rim, rifle strapped across his back, eyes sharp as a hawk's. He had lived on this land long enough to know when something wasn't right, and tonight the wind carried a sound that twisted his gut. A woman's cry. At first, he thought it a coyote wail echoing down the cliffs, but then it came again, clearer, ragged with pain, and human. Luke slowed his Mustang, leaning from the saddle, listening. His heart pounded. There weren't supposed to be women out here. Not this far west, not near Apache territory. Another cry, followed by a harsh shout in Spanish. Luke's jaw tightened. Mexican raiders. He'd seen their trail before, burned wagons, scalped bodies, stolen cattle. He kicked his horse into a gallop, following the canyon edge until the ground broke into a narrow pass. Smoke curled up from below. As he crept to the rim, he saw them. 4 men on horseback, circling like wolves. In the center of their jeers and laughter, a young woman struggled, her hands bound in front of her, a torn strip of cloth gagging her mouth. She wore a simple deerskin dress, fringes ripped from the fight, long black hair falling wild over her shoulders. Even at a distance Luke could tell, she was Apache. His chest tightened. One of the raiders dismounted, yanking her by the arm. She fought like a wildcat, clawing, kicking, drawing curses from the men. But she was outnumbered. The one holding her laughed and struck her across the face. Luke's hand closed on his rifle. He had no business interfering. Apaches weren't exactly friends to white ranchers, and he knew well enough that helping her might turn the tribe's anger on him. But damnation, he couldn't stand by while men treated a woman like that. He took a breath, steadied his aim, and fired. The bullet sang down the canyon, catching the raider square in the shoulder. He toppled backward with a howl. The others shouted, scattering, fumbling for cover. Luke was already moving, swinging into the saddle and thundering down the rocky path. The Mustang leapt boulders, sliding into the sandy wash where the raiders regrouped. Luke didn't hesitate. He fired again, grazing another's hat clean off, then drew his Colt as he charged into the fray. The young woman ducked low, rolling away from the scuffle. The gag slipped free, and she gasped for breath. One raider charged Luke head-on, pistol raised. Luke's Mustang slammed into the man's horse, knocking him aside. Luke swung from the saddle, fist cracking across the outlaw's jaw. Another came at him with a knife. Luke caught his wrist, twisted, and drove him into the dirt. It was chaos, gunfire, curses, the smell of sweat and blood. But within minutes, the raiders broke. 2 bolted into the brush, dragging their wounded comrade. The last scrambled onto his horse and fled, spitting curses back in Spanish. Silence dropped heavy over the canyon. Only the hiss of wind through mesquite broke it. Luke turned, panting, rifle still in hand. The Apache woman stood a few yards away, chest heaving, eyes blazing like dark embers. For a long moment, they only stared at each other. Her lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. Luke saw the cut across her cheek where she'd been struck, the raw red of rope burns around her wrists. She was proud, though. She didn't shrink, didn't lower her gaze. Luke slung his rifle over his shoulder and raised his hands slowly, palms open. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said, voice low. She tilted her head, wary, studying him. Her English, when it came, was halting but strong. "Why, you stopped them." Luke let out a breath. "Because no man should treat a woman that way. Doesn't matter who she is." Her dark eyes flickered, a storm of suspicion and something else, reluctant gratitude. She swayed suddenly, knees buckling. Luke darted forward, catching her before she hit the ground. She was lighter than he expected, yet her body was tense with the fight she'd put up. "Easy," he murmured, lowering her gently onto a patch of grass. "You're safe now." Her eyes fluttered shut, but not before she whispered something in Apache, a word Luke didn't understand, but it sounded like prayer. The ride back to his cabin was long. Luke carried her on his Mustang, wrapped in his coat against the night chill. Her head rested against his chest, and though she stirred once or twice, she never fully woke. By the time he reached his cabin, an isolated log house tucked deep in the pines, the moon was high. He dismounted, lifting her carefully in his arms, and carried her inside. His cabin was plain, rough-hewn beams, stone hearth, a single bed, a table with 2 chairs. He laid her gently on the bed, lighting a lamp to chase away the shadows. Her face looked younger in the soft glow, though strong. High cheekbones, proud brow, lips set in determination even as she slept. She was beautiful, yes, but it wasn't beauty that made Luke pause. It was the fire he had seen in her eyes. He cleaned the cut on her cheek with water, binding it with a strip of clean cloth. She stirred, murmuring in Apache. Luke sat back, listening, though he understood none of it. Finally, she woke. Her eyes darted around the cabin, then fixed on him. "You, white man," she said cautiously. Luke gave a small nod. "Name's Luke Callahan." She hesitated, then placed a hand over her chest. "Naya." The name suited her, wild and strong, like the desert itself. Luke leaned back in his chair. "Naya, you're safe here. The men who tried to take you won't be back any time soon." Her gaze narrowed. "You killed them." "Ran them off," Luke said. "They'll think twice before trying again." Silence stretched. Then, in a voice low but edged with steel, she asked, "Why help me?" "Apache and white man. Not friends." Luke met her stare evenly. "Maybe. But I ain't the kind of man to watch someone suffer when I can stop it. Doesn't matter who they are." Her eyes softened just slightly, though suspicion still lingered. "You save me," she admitted quietly. "But Naya cannot stay. My people—" she hesitated, pain flickering across her features. "My people are far." Luke frowned. "What do you mean?" She shook her head, dark hair falling over her shoulders. "Raiders take me from them. Many days. I do not know where home is." Luke's gut twisted. She had been stolen, dragged miles from her family, and left to the mercy of men who would have sold her or worse. "Then until we figure it out," he said firmly, "you'll stay here. I've got food, shelter. You need rest." She opened her mouth to protest, but her body betrayed her. Her hands trembled, her legs weak beneath the blanket. At last, she gave a reluctant nod. "Only for short time," she said. Luke allowed himself a faint smile. "Fair enough." Over the next few days, Naya healed slowly. She was wary, keeping her distance, but Luke noticed how her eyes followed him when she thought he wasn't looking. She asked questions, too, about the land, the horses, the rifle he carried. He learned she was the daughter of an Apache chief, proud of her people and their traditions. Her capture had been a shame she carried heavy on her shoulders. Luke respected her silence when she needed it, but he also found himself talking more than he had in years. He told her about his ranch, how raiders had burned it years ago, leaving only the cabin. He spoke of his brother, killed in the war, and of the loneliness that settled like dust over him. Luke couldn't quite name it. Every morning, he'd wake to find her outside, kneeling in the dew-damp grass, whispering prayers to the rising sun in Apache tongue. Every evening, she sat at the fire, her dark hair catching the glow like strands of midnight silk, weaving leather strips into intricate patterns. She was healing, yes, but not just her body. Slowly, walls fell between them. And slowly, against all sense, Luke found himself needing her presence the way a man in the desert craves water. One afternoon, while Luke worked splitting logs, he noticed her near the corral. Naya stood with her arms crossed, watching the horses. She tilted her head, then stepped through the rails. Luke dropped his axe. "Careful, those broncs don't take kindly to strangers." But Naya moved with a quiet confidence. The wild buckskin gelding snorted, pawing the ground, yet she only murmured softly in Apache, stepping closer, her hand outstretched. To Luke's astonishment, the horse stilled. She laid her hand gently against its muzzle, whispering. The gelding lowered its head. Luke shook his head, half grinning. "Well, I'll be damned. Took me a month to get near that one, and you walk right up like he was born for you." Naya turned, pride in her eyes. "Horse no heart. He feel no fear from me." Luke's grin faded as her words struck deeper than she meant. She was right. The animals sensed it. And maybe, so did he. That night, as they shared venison stew, Luke finally asked the question that had been gnawing at him. "Naya," he said carefully, "do you want me to take you back to your people? I don't know where your band is now, but I could try to find them." She froze, spoon midway to her lips. Slowly, she set it down. "My people," she hesitated, eyes shadowed. "When raiders take me, we cross many lands. I do not know if they live or gone." Her voice cracked faintly on the last word. Luke felt a tightness in his chest. "I'm sorry." For a moment, silence stretched. Then she lifted her chin, her voice steady again. "If spirits wish it, I will see them again. But now," she glanced at him, quick and uncertain, "now I stay here." Luke nodded slowly. He should have felt relief, but the warmth that surged inside him scared him more than the thought of her leaving. A week later, danger came again. Luke had ridden to check his trapline, leaving Naya gathering herbs near the creek. As he returned, the sharp crack of gunfire split the air. His blood iced. He spurred his Mustang, thundering down the trail. By the creek, Naya crouched behind a boulder, clutching a knife, her eyes fierce. Across the water, 2 raiders, the same men who had fled weeks ago, were closing in. Luke didn't think. He fired, sending one diving for cover. The other raised his pistol, shot ringing wild as Luke charged. The Mustang leapt the creek, and Luke tackled the man clean off his feet. The fight was brutal. Fists, dirt, blood. Luke finally slammed the raider's head against a rock, leaving him limp. The second fled into the trees, cursing. Breathing hard, Luke turned. Naya still stood ready, knife in hand, but her eyes were locked on him. For the first time since he'd met her, they filled with tears. "You come back," she whispered, her voice breaking. Luke's chest ached. He stepped closer, slowly taking the knife from her trembling hand. "Of course I did. I won't let them take you again." Her eyes burned into his, and in the next heartbeat, she moved, throwing her arms around him. She pressed her face against his chest, clutching him as if he were the only safe place left in the world. For a long moment, Luke simply held her, his rough hand stroking her dark hair. The smell of her, wild herbs, smoke, river water, filled his senses. And suddenly, Luke realized the truth. He wasn't just protecting her anymore. He loved her. That night, they sat by the fire, silence heavy with everything left unsaid. Finally, Naya spoke. "When raiders take me," she began softly, "I tell myself heart must turn to stone. No man can touch it. No man can break it." She looked at him, eyes shining. "But you make stone warm again." Luke's throat tightened. He reached across the fire, taking her hand in his. Her fingers trembled, but she didn't pull away. "I didn't expect this," he admitted, voice low. "Didn't expect to feel anything again. But you, Naya, you've given me back something I thought was gone for good." Her lips parted, and for the first time, a full smile curved her mouth. Slowly, Luke leaned across the fire. She met him halfway, her breath warm against his lips before their mouths touched. The kiss was tentative at first, uncertain, fragile, but when she pressed closer, it deepened, carrying the weight of everything they'd both lost, everything they'd both found. When they finally broke apart, she whispered against his lips, "You save more than my life, Luke Callahan. You save my heart." The days that followed were different. They still worked side by side, splitting wood, tending the horses, gathering berries, but now their hands brushed often, and when their eyes met, neither looked away. At night, she rested against his chest by the fire, whispering stories of her people, and he shared tales of his lost ranch and dreams he'd long buried. Luke felt something he hadn't in years. Hope. One evening, as the stars wheeled above, he turned to her. "Naya, what if you didn't go back? What if you stayed, With me." She was quiet for a long time, then laid her hand over his heart. "My place is where heart feels at home. Here, with you." Luke's breath caught. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her as if the world might tear her away. And in that embrace, he knew, this Apache beauty hadn't just stolen his heart. She had become it. Epilogue. Seasons changed. Together, Luke and Naya built more than a cabin, they built a life. Though whispers in town frowned at a white rancher loving an Apache woman, neither cared. For theirs was a bond born of fire, forged in danger and sealed with trust. And every dawn, when Naya lifted her prayers to the rising sun, Luke stood beside her, because he knew the greatest gift the desert had given him was the day he heard a woman's cry echo through the canyon. The day he rescued her, and she rescued him right back.